I know it's been 2 months since I've last made a video, and this is not going to be related to Bug 10. Bug 10 needs at least another week to work on. I haven't even started it. I hate every video editor on the planet except for Shotcut, and I've gotten too good for it. On with your video. What's up, YouTube? If you've been shopping for cheap mass storage, you've probably been scrolling through eBay listings looking for cheap SATA hard drives. And maybe you found a great deal from some guy who says the drive was barely used. But whilst that might be a good deal on a SATA drive, it isn't really a cost-effective way of having a lot of storage, unless you're so poor that you can't afford to have the overhead that you need to build this, or in a situation that this is your only option. Because there's a much better way to buy storage that almost nobody talks about, and even if they are, it's seldom actually talked about how it actually works, and it's usually all new drives and new controllers, so it has huge price tags attached. Today I'm going to demonstrate why used enterprise SAS hard drives are one of the biggest bargains in used PC hardware, how you can actually use them in a normal desktop PC, and why they can save you quite the big amount of money. Let's get right into it. When you buy a used SATA drive, or even a refurbished one, you're buying a can of worms, especially on the low end of the market. I've actually had pretty terrible luck with them. One of the refurbished SATA drives I got was for my Steam Deck's external game drive, and it lived in an external enclosure for about a year, and then it died right after transferring everything off of it to another drive. Then I had another drive that worked perfectly fine for about another year until I moved it into another system. After that, the controller board decided to fry itself. Now, I'm not saying every refurbished SATA drive is bad. Plenty of them are supposed to be perfectly fine. My point is that you'll never really know what kind of life they've lived right up until they get into your computer. You just can't. You'll never know what the drive has been through before it gets into your hands, unless you buy new. The listing says works great if it's not listed as broken, and most listings nowadays show a copy of a Crystal Disk Info screenshot if they're an eBay seller that deals with tech often. Or at the very least, most drives will have their smart info in the description. But SATA drives tend to have terrible stats, kinda like if a car had 200,000 miles on it. You'd want to stay away from it unless you knew what you were getting into. Meanwhile, there's another category of hard drives sitting on eBay that most people, including tech heads like me, completely ignore. Used enterprise SAS drives. These things come out of servers, and the second us nerds see SAS, they immediately close the listing because they don't think it'll work in a regular PC. And that's exactly why they're so cheap, because the demand is relatively low compared to the supply. Tens of thousands of drives get pulled out of servers every year, because data centers upgrade their hardware on schedules, not because the drive broke. And even if the drive did break, they would probably RMA the drive because they get long warranties on the drives. This is the part that actually surprised me. Most people assume that data center drives get abused because they're running 24/7. In reality, they're treated better than most consumer drives. They get installed once, and they will stay in a temperature-controlled rack with UPS power delivery, and they will be monitored for the remainder of the contract that got signed. If one starts showing warning signs, it gets replaced with a cold spare they have laying around because downtime costs money. So perfectly functional drives get retired simply because the company upgrades to larger or faster storage. Let's look at some actual numbers. A used 4TB SATA drive usually goes for around $65, or at least one that you would want to use for this application. Now let's compare that to a 4TB SAS drive. I've personally seen them for about $25, although right now they're closer to $35. Even at $35, that's almost half the price. Also, side note, if you're looking at drives on eBay, the money-back guarantee is awesome. If the drive comes broken, which has happened, it can get refunded. 8TB enterprise drives are getting surprisingly affordable too, although I consider it out of my price range. The price per terabyte is where SAS drives really start to shine. The bigger and more safe you go, the more money you save. But this is where most people give up. I personally googled why the SAS connector couldn't just connect to SATA, because I had just assumed that's what all hard drives plugged in over. I remember it said something about when you try to connect SAS over SATA it could kill your motherboard, and I didn't read into it any further. But no, they use a different interface. So what do? You buy something called an HBA. That stands for a host bus adapter. Now think of it as a translator. Your computer talks PCIe, and the HBA translates that into the SAS protocol. That's its job. One of my favorites is the Inspur LSI 9300 AI. They're usually around 15 bucks. Then you go grab an SFF 8643 to SFF 8482 breakout cable. Those are around 8 bucks. Install the card, plug in the cable, connect your drives, and presto! Your operating system just sees the drives. You set up a RAID pool and you can just forget about it. Let's say you buy two 4TB SAS drives, $35 for each, 75 bucks total. You add a $15 HBA, and you add an $8 cable, and you're at 93 bucks total. Now compare that to buying two used SATA drives. That's roughly $130 just for the drives. You just saved almost 40 bucks. But think of it another way. For a little more than the price of one SATA drive, you've got two enterprise drives. You could run RAID 1 and have mirrored storage, or keep them separate and enjoy double the capacity. Your choice. Pay attention to the drive format too. Most enterprise drives are 3.5-inch hard drives, but some are 2.5-inch. Also, you need to make sure you're buying the correct cable for your HBA. Not every connector is the same, so spend 5 minutes researching before you buy, so it'll save you hours later. Also personally got burnt by this. I googled if my 6 GPPS drives would work on the same HBA cable as my 12 GPPS drives, and it said it would work, but in the case of my SAS card, it ended up killing the card, and I ended up needing to buy a new one and a second cable. Some things I could probably debunk. One of them is enterprise drives have tons of hours. And yeah, they do. Power on hours alone don't tell you whether a drive is healthy. Anyone else remember that test where that BMW went a million miles in 3 years and it was fine? It's because mechanical devices don't like the process of starting to spin up. They will be happier when they are going. Another one is they're louder. Personally, I haven't encountered that across multiple SAS drives. However, I will note that the extra fan noise of needing to crank your fans, or adding more of them, will make your PC more noisy. If your PC sits right next to the bed, that's something you need to consider. But if it's in another room, who cares? And the last one, they use more power. Also true. Usually only by a few watts though, and unless you're running a massive array, the difference is tiny. I know I'm saying personally a lot, but personally I got away with running a whole system on a 300 watt AC Bell PSU with a 4-drive RAID before I upgraded the system. So I would say it will be comfortably within SATA power requirements. Consumer SATA drives are familiar, and enterprise SAS drives are overlooked. That's why they're such a good value, because for the cost of a cheap HBA and one cable, you unlock an entire market of enterprise hardware that most people never even consider. You save money, you get better gear, a better upgrade path, and it just requires a bit more effort. If you're building a media server, a backup machine, a home lab, or a NAS, it's one of the biggest upgrades you can make on a budget. The whole reason I went down this rabbit hole was because I got tired of refurbished SATA drives dying on me. After switching to SAS drives, I've had a much better experience. The only problem was Windows storage spaces getting desynced and the research I had to do. Buy from reputable sellers and make sure you're getting the right HBA and the right cables. If you're willing to spend about 20 minutes installing a PCIe card, you can nearly cut your storage costs in half. Thanks for watching. If this saved you some money, drop a like, subscribe, and if you want more budget hardware tips, leave a comment, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.